Division. Darian Fenton.
After that lecture from that minister, I rise to give my strong support to the amendment in the name of David Shearer and say I really resent being lectured by that minister. That minister who had all the benefits and supports when she found herself in trouble, and now she stands in this House and tells everybody what they should be doing when she pulled the ladder up after her. This government, Mr Speaker, campaigned on building a brighter future. We were promised a bright future in 2008, but we're still waiting. And the question on everyone's lips now is, will we ever get there? Will we ever get there? Now, I have to say that the people of New Zealand are extremely generous. During the election campaign, they took into account the terrible couple of years that we've had, the awful tragedies the country has suffered in Christchurch and the tragedy at Pike River Mine. So they've given the government another chance, but the government seems intent on squandering the goodwill of New Zealanders and testing people to their limits, and particularly when it comes to asset sales. The bottom line, Mr Speaker, is that New Zealanders don't want their assets sold, but the government's not listening. Their whole economic program for the next 3 years is based on flogging off assets. The reality is they have no other plan, so they're stuck with it, and that's why they're not listening. The world has changed, but National's answers haven't. What we're seeing now is a government that's circled the wagons, and they're into managing economic decline. Now, how sad is that? They've given up. They're into dumbing down the expectation of Kiwis and blaming those who are hardest hit. So Kiwis are voting with their feet, and who can blame them? Over 113,000 Kiwis have left for Australia since John Key promised us all that our kids would be kept at home. In fact, last year was the highest ever recorded number net migration of people to Australia, 36,900 people. Under their watch, unemployment has increased by 50%, leaving 157,000 New Zealanders out of work. The redundancies, the closures, the layoffs just keep coming. John Key promised to close the wage gap with Australia. Well, the fact is, since he came to office, the gap has massively increased. And nothing's happening on that front, Mr Speaker. The Labour Department told us in the Financial Review the other day that they've done no work on that for the last 2 years. They've given up on it. And I have to say that the paltry increase to the minimum wage announced a couple of weeks ago was a wasted opportunity. In real terms, that increase of 50 cents an hour, taking the minimum wage to $13.50, makes someone on the minimum wage just 20 cents an hour better off since National's first minimum wage raise in April 29. On Thursday morning this week, 1,500 caregivers who work for Oceania aged care facilities across New Zealand, 1,500 caregivers who look after our older relatives, the people we love and care for and want to be cared for, will reluctantly take strike action. These are the caregivers, as I said, who do a wonderful job looking after our much-loved older family members, yet some are paid just 11 cents above minimum wage. Now, this says an awful lot about how this government and how we as a country value older people, and a lot about the government's attitude to those most vulnerable. The government missed an opportunity with the minimum wage increase to address soaring income inequality and assist stretched families who are struggling to make ends meet. They could have increased the minimum wage. They should have increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour at a time when the poverty and impact on families and children in New Zealand are major concerns, and we have the government crying crocodile tears about it. They could have taken that step, and that would have been a significant step in addressing income inequality. Family incomes under this government have dropped 4.7% in real terms since 2009, with inflation outstripping income growth. Families now have to spend 7.4% more on rent alone compared to last year. 53% of New Zealand families now say they are barely able or unable to meet their basic needs as housing costs continue to rise and pay packets shrink. John Key's 2010 tax cuts increased the difference in take-home pay between someone on $30,000 a year and someone on $150,000 a year by $135 a week. And that had an even worse effect when you take into account the GST increase. Chief executive officers in New Zealand in the top 48 listed companies and SOEs received an average pay increase of $202,000 in 2010 on an average income of $1.6 million a year. Now, something is deeply wrong in New Zealand, but we are seeing nothing from John Key's national government to address this huge problem, this growing problem of poverty and inequality. John Key has admitted he couldn't live on the minimum wage, but he expects others to. And of course the government will expect our young people, our 16 and 17-year-olds, and some of them 18 and 19, to live on a lower minimum wage because they intend to drop it to 80% of the minimum wage. And they call it a starting out wage. It will be $10.80 an hour. How can anyone live on that? But, so, Mr Speaker, an immediate increase in the statutory minimum wage to $15 an hour would have been a first step in overcoming the rampant inequality and poverty that we are seeing. It is not a problem with beneficiary families, it's a problem with working families. And go to any Salvation Army and they will tell you they are the people coming through the door. They cannot earn enough to feed their families. That is where the problem, and we have a vicious circle of low wages and we have a circle of low productivity. So the government likes to talk about increasing productivity, but they're going to have to do an awful lot more if they're serious about that and they are serious about what they say is their commitment to better jobs and higher wages. I had to laugh at the Prime Minister's cheeky answer this afternoon when he started talking about Labor's policy for 1970s industrial relations. Can I say, Mr Speaker, what we're seeing is the worst of industrial relations at the moment. We're seeing 1990s industrial relations with 750 workers in the 1920s, that's right, with 750 meat workers about to be locked out, absolutely brutally. It's brutal. They work in small towns. They work in small towns like Moriwa and Wairua, and those communities absolutely rely on those meatworks to help the community feed its families. Now, what we're seeing is a belief in this government that somehow you can impose greater productivity from the top down. Now, let me tell you, Mr Speaker, you cannot just tell people they have to be more productive. And what the government's doing will deliver more of the same results. Wages lagging, productivity falling behind, and people continuing to leave for better opportunities overseas. But as I said, I think the national government's given up. They brag about our low wages. They continue on their search for more flexibility in the workplace, as outlined by the Prime Minister in his speech, despite it undermining job security, decent work and decent wages. We've yet to see any sustainable improvement in our productivity levels, and the relative decline in living standards, particularly compared to Australia, has become a brutal reality for many Kiwis who work hard but just can't get ahead. There's nothing on offer from the government in this space, and there's even less for those hard-working people who are self-employed or contracted, who have to fill out the GST on the table at night. There is nothing for them. They are among some of the lowest paid, but this government is ignoring them as well. So no wonder, Mr Speaker, the grass seems greener on the other side.
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, I'd like to support the motion with respect to this debate and to